District Number 67 Board of Education meeting for Tuesday, November 29th, 2011. May I have a roll call, please, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Anderson,
Present.
Mrs. Fisher,
Present.
Mr. Julian,
Here.
Mr. Pendersky,
Present.
Mrs. Rose,
Present.
Mr. Schuler,
Here.
Mrs. Wold.
Here. President's report. The Board of Education would like to thank the parents and community members who attended the forums and contacted us over the past few days. We realize this issue has the ability to divide our community, but we also are aware that our community has a long history of respectful and civil public discourse, along with thoughtful decision-making. We appreciate your comments, concerns, and input. We have respect for all the differing opinions within our community. During this unsettling time for our school district, I would also like to thank our teachers and staff that have diligently focused on the educational and emotional needs of our students. Thank you. Superintendent's report.
No superintendent's report tonight.
This brings us to public participation. If there's any member of the community who would like to address the board, I would like to remind you of a couple of things. Number one, to please be respectful of the comments that are made, to understand that this is a time for you to address the board and we are here to listen, to please limit your comments to 3 minutes so that everyone can be heard. Please state your name and address before you begin. Thank you.
Good evening. I apologize. I wanted to speak earlier, but I got here just when you were leaving for the intermission. My name is Terry Desmond. I live at 1681 Yale Court in Lake Forest. I've been a resident of the school district and Lake Forest community for about 17 years. In a former life, I taught school for 10 years, so I have an appreciation of education and for teachers particularly. I was surprised to be elected to a public office. I served for 18 years in an office that dealt with superintendents quite often. They had to file their annual levies with me. It was my job to extend, our office's job, to extend those taxes and certainly work with the administration, school administrators, to be aware of the amount of revenues that they would be getting. And so I've seen excellent superintendents. I've seen mediocre superintendents. I've watched the Lake Forest School District for those 17 years that I resided here. And let me say that the quality of teachers that you have here, the caring of the school board members that I have seen over the years, and particularly the administration, specifically Harry Griffith. I think if Harry Griffith were to be compared with any of the superintendents that I've ever been in contact with, he'd be at the top of the list. Thanks to your teachers, the board, you have one of the finest school districts, not only in the state of Illinois, but in the Midwest, much to the work of Harry Griffith, who, in my eyes, has always had the interest of this school district at heart. I also taught at the university level. I taught public administration, and I would always have my students, before they got too far into it, to read a book called The Oxbow Incident. And the Oxbow Incident, just to remind all of you who I know have all read it, basically concerns a hysteria that develops after a murder within a community, and the instant knee-jerk reaction that took place, trying to seek out who did it, and of course a group of people did, and a murder took place, only to find out that the wrong person was murdered, and that all of the information that would have been necessary to really make a logical decision was never sought out. And I try to get my students to make sure that when they made a critical decision, that they were assured that they had all of the information and all the facts. And I would hope that if you're going to make a critical decision this evening, the school board takes all of that in mind. And that, you know, I sat around here in the intermission hearing a lot of different discourse and criticism about how much money people make and other things that maybe have happened. And, you know, this has nothing to do with what's going on with this specific incident that you're going to have to decide on this evening. And I also will say that, you know, when you go out to find a new superintendent to come in here next year to work as administrator of 2 school districts, you're going to be paying the same amount of money that you're paying right now, because that's what it's going to take to find somebody of the caliber of the superintendent that you have right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
My name's Arthur Lewis. I live at 940 Waveland Road. Is this my good side? I'm here. I've watched the goings-on through the newspaper. I believe I've stayed informed. I have not interviewed any of the board, nor have I interviewed the victim or Mr. Steinick. But I as I talk with people in the community, and of course, oddly enough, everybody has an opinion. I do hear questions about judgment and decision-making, but oddly enough, almost everybody that I've spoken to who looks unfavorably also has another axe to grind. It may be that they're unhappy with the compensation package. It may be that they're unhappy with pension. It may be that they're unhappy that money was spent on the Mandarin program. It may be that they're unhappy that their child didn't qualify for school services. And you know, you're going to be where you are on the side of the emotional centerpiece here, but I would really ask you all to kind of hold up a mirror and look and say that this isn't the time or the place to bring all the other baggage into this circumstance. I'm also reminded that as parents, we tend to look at mistakes and say, if you think you made a mistake, acknowledge it, learn from it, work to change. Okay? And I'm not qualified to speak on the quality of a decision that was made 3 years ago, 2 years ago, whatever. But as a citizen of this republic, I would ask that we learn from it. We make sure that we have the necessary watchdog and controls in place. And I would also suggest that those in the community who are especially unhappy with how it was handled, get off your duff, run for Board of Education, and be a more cantankerous board. You want to know what? I know Harry both as a man as well as an administrator. We've sat on opposite sides of the table. Sometime I haven't gotten what I was advocating for my child or for other students. On occasion, I have won some concessions. At no time did I think that Harry was making decisions personally. I thought he was making decisions with the community in mind. And my last point, before I turn it over to somebody else, is to say, my attention was caught once again by the internet this afternoon, because somebody who has written the rule book on ethics was shocked, stunned. At least that's what the headline said, although at no place was she actually quoted as saying that. And there was commentary in there that said she doesn't agree with how it was handled from the public perception. Okay? But she then went on to say, but it's perfectly understandable the role that the board played in protecting the taxpayers' money. Okay. So as we approach this, let's make sure we remain even-handed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Scott Phelps. I reside at it's 1250 Long Meadow Lane. For 16 years I've been there. How could I forget that? I have 4 children that have gone through District 67 and 115. They couldn't be happier now as they get through college and get on with their lives. I just want to say the building that we happen to be sitting in right now at one point was being discussed demolished. $2 million was going to be the fee to take down the bricks. And Harry Griffith was one of the champions that said there's got to be a use for this building in this community. And Cedal was found, and Little Scouts was found, and a home for the football players was housed, and a professional theater that's doing Christmas Carol, by the way, downstairs. But these are good things for the community, and they're actually paying rent as opposed to a $2 million cost to the taxpayers to take down the building. He found a use for this space. And I've known the man for a decade, and anything and everything that he's done has been with the best intentions, with the leadership that I admire, and I am a big fan of Dr. Harry Griffith. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Hi, Michael Beecham, 630 Meadowood Drive in Lake Forest. I just have one quick request of the board for this evening. I request that you remove from the consensus agenda the item D, the destruction of audio recordings from January 27th, 2010. If there's going to be an investigation of the district, then I don't think that the district should be destroying any more closed meeting recordings or minutes until that investigation is complete, because it could prove valuable in the discussion. Is one of the board members willing to make a motion to remove it from the consent agenda?
I'd like to refer this matter to our legal counsel who's present tonight, because it concerns, we're being asked to interpret or comment on a law.
Yeah, that man's a discretionary determination by the board, whether or not to do that. There is a statutory time period when the board can do that, but it's up to the board whether or not to do that.
Thank you. When we get to the consent agenda, we will address it then.
Okay, thank you.
Yes?
Hi, Harry. I'm Shirley Miller. I live 1051 McCormick. Been on the other side, Harry, arguing with you. But I want to thank you. Lived here since you came, before you came. Have watched this district change, have watched 115 change. Had my 3 kids go through here. In hindsight, we make, we can 20/20. Every executive makes decisions. I happen to think that your decision was right. People disagree. A lot of people disagree on it, okay? We make decisions, executives make decisions with the information they have all the time. You've apologized for that decision. I think what we're seeing in this community is a reflection of a broader sense of anger that we're seeing globally, okay? And as others have brought up, bringing in and putting into the bucket a lot of other things. This needs to be isolated and seen only for that. We have a wonderful board of very dedicated people, and I challenge anybody to, I know I couldn't do it, the hours that they put in. And I also look around as I hobble through here, and I see so many familiar faces that I saw 15 years ago. if it isn't the mark of a good manager and a good executive to have loyal people still around him that still are working for him. They can go somewhere else, not just in this economy, but before, they could have gone somewhere else to work, and they're still here, and I still see them. So, thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the board? Seeing none, we will move on to, oh, yes, sir.
Same name, same address as
I'm
before.
sorry, I still need it.
Eric Harmon, 636 Grandview Lane.
Thank you.
One thing I do see missing from the agenda is the issue of an outside investigation. Isn't that something that the board should be addressing at this point?
There is an item on the agenda to address that.
To hire, to specifically hire a third-party independent investigator?
We had
It
the-
is on the
is
agenda,
on the
and it will be
agenda.
addressed.
Okay.
That brings us to the report section, the 2010-11 assessment report. Dr. Griffith?
All right, board members, thank you. This is the annual assessment report that Dr. Julie Cooley and Joe Malin have worked for on our behalf. It has been reviewed by the Board Education Committee that meets on a monthly basis, and also has been reviewed by our principals and quite a few of our teachers for presentation tonight. Dr. Cooley, thank you for you and Joe to organize this.
Well, good evening, board members and community, and I'm really thrilled to be able to give the report with so many individuals here, because it's really a tremendous report. And Joel will come up in a little bit to do part of the presentation. But this is an annual event for us to go over some of our assessments. Our assessments are really, we have an assessment-rich and a data-rich environment. We start with kindergartners before they come into school and give them a week of assessments. And then we do benchmark assessments 3 times a year in reading and math and writing, called the Ames Web. We just a wide variety of different assessments to go across the different areas that we look at regarding our students. But tonight we're going to focus just on a few things to kind of narrow the report. You do have the complete assessment report. It actually comes in 2 parts. And so you've got all of that, and all of that we posted. One section is about the standardized tests, and the other section are some of the research and reports and various things that we've done over the past year. So what we're going to look at right now is the NWA MAP test. We give this test in the fall and the spring. It is a standardized test. It's given across the nation. And these are the mean scores for reading. A RIT score is what's called a Roche unit score, and it represents a set of skills that a student has. So it's not a benchmark per se, but it's an actual, it references a specific set of skills. And you see I've got some historical data, and what you see is a very nice trend. What I'm going to point out, though, on this one particular slide is the very last column, the national percentile. Recently, it was just really about a year ago, NWA looked at national percentile when it comes to a whole school. And so we never knew until about a year ago where we stood. We knew that our students were scoring high, above the average, we could tell, but we didn't really know if you had a school with an average mean of 200.7, what that meant. So you can see in the last column what we found out is that across the 5 million students who take the NWA test, we're quite strong, and you can see either the 98th or the 99th percentile. And on those grades where you actually see a plus, we actually go above and beyond what's even registered at all. So very, very strong showing in terms of reading. And right here I'd like to point out to you something that we've discussed over the past several years. We had a group of students start to come through that I started calling outliers, and I think we kind of saw this maybe 4 years ago, and they were just a little bit stronger, a little stronger mean than the year before. And so we started to just watch them. And indeed, they continued on that way, much stronger than their cohorts that had come before them. But then what we started to see recently is that actually now we're starting to see in the early grades cohorts that are actually surpassing this group of outliers. So I believe that some of these results are going to be based on some of the reports that we've done, how we've examined the math programs, how we've focused on our interventions that we do, which we're going to talk a little bit about, but a really excellent trend. And you can see approximately in 2007, 2008, the scores started to flip up a little bit higher. And in that interesting cohort group, I just recall that spring a few years ago where we actually told the teachers, guess what, 8th grade teachers, the kids that you're teaching exited 7th grade the same as your last 8th graders have exited. So they needed to accelerate their curriculum, needed to ramp up, and they did. And I'm going to tell you one other interesting story about that group of students in a minute. So here are the math results. And math has been
Dr.
really...
Cooley,
Yes?
before we move on, can you just talk for a minute about what made that cohort of students different? Or is it just that just happened to be the way it was this year? Because I'd like to see if there's any
Well, I need my helper, Joe, to answer that question fully, and but I'll give it a shot, Joe, and then you can maybe respond if you'd like to. But I believe really cohorts of students do have a complexion, we find. Your teachers will find that. I think we've got Julie here, and I'm sure she would agree with that. They're just the quirks of the group, and they seem to, and they hang together all the way through the grades, and you can kind of see that. So I think there's some of that, but I think there's also the fact that we're doing more with data. We're doing goal setting over the last few years. We're doing a lot of things that have supported a group of students that were a strong group of students. So I hope that answers your question. We maybe can ask Joe that a little bit later too. So when we look at the math results, again, I'm going to just call your attention to the national percentile column. You can see how strong that is. Again, community has so much to be proud of. These are just incredible results. To think that over 5 million students that we would end up in the 99th percentile. It just, again, someone earlier said that we have a great group of teachers and students, and that is quite true. So let's look back at that cohort group then again. Again, in math, too, they were outliers. You can see they exited very, very strong. And you can see there were a couple other years where they exited just as strong. But I'm going to show you a little bit more about math here coming up, too. But again, we have now a pocket of students in the early grades that are even surpassing previous cohorts of groups and that cohort too. So it'll be quite interesting. And I do have to say with math, we are doing more. We were pretty strong with interventions for all students in reading, and just in the past few years we've really ramped that up with math, as well as I think on the challenging end as well. So there's some important changes. The MAP test is very unique because we're able to show growth because we give it in the fall and the spring. We can see what students do, and students do goal setting around this test. The MAP, again, it's a national test, but there are some important changes coming up that I wanted you to be aware of, and we'll talk about in the next couple years as well. The test, we actually were an early adopter this fall and had our test aligned to the Common Core standards, which are adopted in over 40 states in the country. And what will happen is that it doesn't change the test for the students so much, but it will change our reporting. So we'll know, where are we stronger in our curriculum? We'll get a lot of information about that in relation to the Common Core. Also, the MAP, the NWA, the Northwest Evaluation Association, did new national norms. So they have more students, more states, taking the test, that kind of thing. So they re-norm every I think it's 3 years or 3 years, I believe it is. So in these new norms, it did affect some of the percentages for our students, and so families are going to see that. We did post something on the web about that. If a family saw a change in their students' personal percentile, it was because of this new norming. But I also want to say that I believe coming up, we're going to have to say that nice historical chart that I just showed you, we're going to have to say, time out, new baseline year. The test is starting to change, and you can see that in 2012, 2013, this test will actually have non-multiple choice items, which the Common Core is really about higher thinking, all of those kinds of things, so you can't answer them in multiple choice questions. So there's going to be quite a dramatic change in this assessment. They may be part of a future state test, we don't know, but in any case we're going to have a little bit of a more difficult time comparing in the future, and we'll be talking more about that. So then, and so here's the another thing that we look at each year, and that's how our students do as they leave us. How well have we prepared them for high school? And when we look at that, perhaps the most highest stake, at least in this community, is how our students do on the ACT test. So as we look at that in the top column of this table, you'll see the Deer Path Middle School group for the class of 2011, which would be the last class where we have an official test score. The class of 2011, you'll see it's the third one on the table there, had the highest ACT in school history with a composite score of 26.8. And if I could show you the historical, this isn't the high school report. I mean, that trend has been very, very, very dramatic and very just impressive is the only word I could think I could use for that.
Let me just quick add that when you look at the Lake Forest High School average, Lake Forest High School students have this year, for the 6th consecutive year, had the highest ACT average in the history of Lake Forest High School.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so what I want to show you then, if we look at Deer Path, the 27.3, when we can separate the data out to show, look at Deer Path against the rest of the group. And I just wanted to point out math. I had mentioned how we've had a fairly stable but very strong math program. And you can see in the area of math, the class of 2011, was 0.7 higher than the rest of the group. And typically with the ACT, if you see a switch of about a 0.3, you're looking at something significant. So the way we're sending our students off in math it just couldn't be better. It's just wonderful. I do want to say one little thing about that cohort group of students. They are currently sophomores now at the high school, and because I also do the high school report, we'll be doing that report actually next Tuesday, if any of you'd like to return for that one. Because that class that we noticed going through has the highest plan score now in the history of the high school. So therefore, we're going to be setting more records, we believe, if that cohort continues on as a strong group of students. So we're going to look a little bit at the ISAT test. ISAT test much different than the MAP test that we just talked about. The ISAT test has a cut score. And on that cut score, students who score above that cut score, 1 point, 2 points, however many points, anywhere above the cut score, they say those students meet the standards or exceed the standards based on another cut score. So it's quite a different test. And based on a student's score, you don't know what skills they've attained or not attained. So it's not as useful of a test in our environment. We do use it to a certain degree for a few things. So you can see on District 67 in the very first column, and we've had a nice trend, had the highest number of students achieving standards in the last three consecutive years. And the districts here that are represented, and you'll be able to see this again on the website if you can't see it clearly now, we chose districts that were most similar in size and socioeconomic to create a comparison, although we like to throw Lake Bluff in the mix just because. So you can see there are a couple of districts who have done better. The table the graph is just 2 percentage degree apart, so really maybe the spread looks a little bit more than it actually is. And so again, 96% of the students met or exceeded the state standards. However, I do have to report that we did not meet the adequate yearly performance with our special education group. So we, along with 65% of the other districts in Illinois, failed to make AYP this year. 85% was the requirement. So we could not 85% of our special ed students did not meet the goal, which is not too surprising. I didn't do the research on this exactly. I could find out if you would like me to. But on the percentage of schools who did make AYP, some of them do not have a subgroup. So you have to have at least 45 special education students. So if you have 44, that's not reported. Therefore, it was easier to make the 85%, which clearly we would have made the 85% had it not been for our special ed group. I do have to point out to you, though, that we'll be in even more company in 2012 because the benchmarks increase across the nation. So 92.5% will be required next year. And then in 2014, 100% of students will be required to meet standards. Otherwise, schools are labeled as failing. So that's not such a good piece of news, but again, we have plenty of company in that. One thing I mentioned just briefly earlier, and you've got actually a couple of complete, thorough reports regarding our students who receive interventions. So the benchmarking that we look at, we're constantly looking for students who might need a little bit of support. And if they do, we provide some interventions for them. And you can see here is just a flat-out number of students that we put in what we call tiered interventions. Tier 1 is the general education population. Tiers 2 and 3 are students who get above and beyond the general core curriculum. And I just wanted to point out here, again, you can look at the complete report, how we've reduced the number of students who even need those interventions. I think that we're getting so good at it, so strong at it, that we're just reducing all the way across, and not only across the years, but also across the grades, really shrinking the percentages that need any kind of support. And I think I'm going to call Joe, right? Are we going to, almost to the point there, we're going to get our researcher up here and talk about just a few of our reports.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Cooley. I think what Dr. Cooley did to kind of put into context is she provided a lot of great information in terms of product information, and I'm hoping to supplement that with a little bit of insight in terms of the process that maybe allowed us to get to that product. So first of all, what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about a product called Pearson Inform. And first I'd like to share a conclusion that we've come to is that really where we're at is at a very high level in terms of achievement, as you can see. In order to maintain and really continue to find ways to grow it within that context, it hinges to a large degree on being able to access and utilize good information. So that's kind of where Pearson Inform comes in. It's one way of thinking about it is it's a data warehouse, a repository of information from a variety of sources, so a variety of assessment sources. As Julie shared, we have a number of them. Kind of bring it all into one spot, and it does more than that though too. It also is able to bring in some data and analytic capabilities in terms of graphing and in terms of creating tables and providing ultimately data at the fingertips of educators so that they can make high quality decisions. We think that's one of the big secrets to continuing to grow within an already really strong district. And that's something I would just commend the teachers for so much, for their ability to work within teams and utilize this information. So Pearson Inform is a product that I think is one of our kind of secrets, one of the ways that we are able to maintain growth. Wanted to share that with you. One of the big ways that we were able to grow this year is in terms of our ability to link two different systems, a PowerSchool system and our Pearson Inform system, so that when teachers are logged in to PowerTeacher, which they utilize for things like their grade book and for taking daily attendance, they're now able to immediately at a point and click access the Pearson Inform system. So when they do that, and so this kind of visualizes that for you. The first visual there is you see that little green visual. If they click on that, immediately they're brought into that Pearson Inform system. And what they do then is they see a dashboard which is tailored to their context. So it includes data and information based on assessments that are relevant for them and for the students who they are teaching. Okay, so right away, they can also interact with that dashboard. They can hover over it and click on a particular bar that might be of interest. They might be interested in students who are in a particular range. And then they can drill down into that and see those students. And also they can even drill down further all the way to an individual student who might be of interest for a particular reason. Learning about the strengths and weaknesses or strengths and areas for growth, I should say, for particular students and groups of students, making decisions based upon that. And this is a visual of what they would see actually if they click on an individual child. They would actually be able to see all of the data that's been loaded into this system since the student has been, participating in the district. So it's a large amount of information which can be organized in a variety of ways in terms of the reading assessments, the writing assessments, you name it. You can really get the information organized in a variety of ways. You can see it in table format, export it into Excel, do a number of things so that again, we can really take advantage of our need to make good decisions based on information. Just a couple other things, a couple of other steps forward that we took with this system. In June, we were able to host a regional conference here, and so brought in a number of educators from districts all over the Midwest and even from Texas, I guess. It was a really great chance to hear, making sure that we're maximizing the mileage of this, and to hear some new ideas. And one of the biggest ideas that we came to was that a response to intervention program is something that we could really utilize Inform for, so we can track which students are receiving what interventions, for exactly what programs are being used, number of minutes, and we can use this kind of from a record keeping perspective. In the past, we've really relied on paper and pencil to do that, and that's quite cumbersome, and it's not ideal. So that's something that we learned and something that we're really working towards right now. We also provided a lot of training for staff so that we can best use, so people really know how to best use this product, which can be a little bit complicated, and you need to be trained and you need to kind of practice with it. Okay. I'd say one of the other big things that Julie and I collaborate on, and others as well, is really reviewing and evaluating our new programs and our pilots as they're occurring, sometimes from a formative perspective, so that we can collect feedback while things are happening and make tweaks and changes in the moment, and sometimes more from a summative perspective, where we can really reflect back and see how well did something work. So utilizing both. Just a couple of examples of that. MathFacts in a Flash is a product where I think recently we determined this is an area that we could potentially grow in terms of helping students to really become more fluid and fluent with their math facts acquisition, being able to do quick computations and calculations in their head, feeling that if they're able to do that, that will unlock the ability to do kind of the more complex math types of concepts as well. And it's something where we felt that there was room for growth there. It was something that we needed to fill. And so MathFacts in a Flash is a product that we were able to utilize through our NEO technology devices. And students really love it, and they're really working hard with it. And indeed, we did want to review and see the results of that. Indeed, we're seeing students mastering more of their key math facts benchmarks, doing it more quickly, more fluidly, more accurately. And that's being reflected on external assessments as well, not just on those math facts assessments. Similarly, utilizing the NEO, another area of need that we recognized is that we want students to be able to keyboard more proficiently and do so more quickly. I think that that's something that students and adults really do a lot of, and we need to be able to do that in an effective way. And so that was something that using the NEOs we could also enhance students' abilities with. Again, we actually were able to evaluate that and find out that students, in fact, were gaining in terms of their fluency and accuracy of typing, and they're also doing so with a better technique, which I think is going to pay dividends later. They're not kind of the hunting and pecking anymore. They're really doing it the way that it's supposed to be done. And then lastly, just kind of talking about now, I guess, 21st century learning, I think is something that we're really working on as an initiative. Thinking about the skills and tools that are needed to really succeed and even thrive in a 21st century context. And there's something exciting from a research standpoint is how do we measure this? How do we evaluate this? How do we define these different skills that we know are important, and how do we observe them, and how do we make sure that we're nurturing them properly? So that's something exciting that I've been working with. I think we're really closely with Dr. Henriksen and really closely with our committee members to try to come up with ways to really be able to target and see how well that we are actually able to nurture those skills. And so I just wanted to share, as things are coming along, I think behind the scenes research and assessment is really working to to help, to help out in terms of evaluation, in terms of even providing feedback along the way. So just kind of some information there in terms of process. Okay. Okay.
Questions, board members? Actually, I have one about the AYP with the special education. If you could, how are we looking to address that? And, I guess I'm also thinking with bringing in-house from NSSED, will that impact our, the size of our group there?
No, it won't. Whether or not we do our programs in district or if students are out of the district, all of the students are assessed on the ISAT, so it won't change our percentages, that kind of thing. As far as what we're doing, I think you saw a glimpse of that. All of the kinds of assessments that we do to progress monitor students, there's another report in your packet that shows how frequently that we progress monitor our students, and what that means is we do quick checks to see if they're getting the information based on the tools instructional tools that we're using, so that we can make fast adjustments. So we are watching that. Not only our special education teachers watch that data, but also our school psychologists. So those are the kinds of things that we continue to do. I do have to say, though, that I do not predict that we'll make AYP in the future, just because the benchmark continues to go up. Now, it's possible that we do, but there is a safe harbor provision that if you reduce the students who didn't make it, maybe we'll get the safe harbor provision, but I believe our focus should always be on the interventions and whether or not they're working, and not be so concerned about the AYP, because everyone is due to fail in a couple of years.
I have a follow-up question, Dr. Cooley. Could you address how we've met AYP standards prior to this assessment with this particular group of special education students?
We're actually, in some of the buildings, some of them were able to meet the criteria. I didn't bring each school by school here today to talk about, but I believe we've been really addressing it in the same ways. And it's just through very careful, tailored instruction that suits that student. And again, I think that's more of our goal, as opposed to where exactly they wind up on the ISAT. We're really looking at their growth on the MAPS tests, as well as on all the benchmarking and progress monitoring that we do.
Thank you.
And then where is No Child Left Behind in terms of federalism? Doesn't it need to be renewed or changed?
It does. I wonder if Dr. Griffith might speak to that.
Yeah, the the bill is hung up in Congress. It needs to be reauthorized, and there's a delay. And one of the intentions is to replace it with new legislation that it's more geared toward curricular-based assessments and not just a single test score. So there's a major change coming up for the country. This AYP system based on a single test score that's a standardized score is not very useful to teachers. What is useful is what children are learning and how are they doing against that learning in the classroom. And now with these products, board members, that you have helped invest in, teachers have very specific tools that they can use every day to help our students. Our test scores are leaping off the page every year now, and it's just a huge credit to the curriculum as well as the instructional practices. We have teachers in the back here who came to hear the report, and just a shout out to all your teachers doing a great job with this, because we can be very proud of our student population.
Harry, I'm wondering, could we hear from one or two of the teachers how these information systems work real time? I'd be interested to hear from.
Is Jewel here? Come on, Jewel, you can do this.
It sounds great, but I'd like to hear from one of the teachers.
Well, there's Julie. Okay, Julie. Teachers are used to an audience, so come on, Julie.
Sure. Well, I think that the biggest impact or difference that I have seen in the past several years is that the children make individual goals as they're going through the process, and they really are very engaged in meeting their own personal goals. Besides the goals that teachers would have for them individually, it's just it's a contest unto themselves. And if you can get a child to want to learn intrinsically, instead of push, 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 but they're actually, sometimes you have to hold them back because their goals are so lofty, you don't want them to overextend and not reach those. But it has been an incredible tool, and we have seen our children grow, and we have seen our children, the excitement in learning, that a lot of it is self-directed with, of course, parameters from us and guidelines. But they really have embraced a new kind of learning. Not the old rote learning that maybe you and I had as a child. And they are really starting to stretch their minds analytically and creatively. So, I think it speaks to our wonderful program. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Griffith, for calling on our expert here. We could use her next year, I think, too. But I'm so pleased that you talked about goal setting. I mean, it used to be that our students would be done with their tests and compare a score. Did you get a 200? Did you get a 202? Where now they're really focusing on their own personal growth, as Julie mentioned, and that was a switch that was flipped just a few years ago, so we're really pleased with that. Anything else, board members?
Thank you. This brings us to the board committee reports. First, we have the Board of Education Committee, Leslie Fisher and Bill Anderson.
Good evening. On Tuesday, November 17th, at Lake Forest High School West Campus, the Education Committee met from 8:15 to 10:25 a.m. Participants were Dr. Annie Henriksen, Julie Cooley, Dr. Griffith, Joe Malin, and Michelle Shin represented the administration. Bill Anderson and myself represented the Board of Education, and community members and District 67 parents, Amy Lazzarato and Roger Kwan, were present. Laura Montgomery, teacher and technology coach, attended as well. The approval of the minutes from the September 20th meeting were first made by Mr. Anderson and seconded by Dr. Henriksen. The reports to the education meeting were as follows. First, we had a report on Tier 1, 2, and 3 interventions, which Dr. Cooley alluded to very briefly. I just want to give a little more detail there. Dr. Michelle Shin presented at our meeting a summary of tiered reading support in grades 1 through 4. These reading services are provided to give a variety of levels of support based on the student's particular needs. In September, school teams meet to review a variety of data to determine eligibility for services. MAP tests, teacher input, guided reading levels, and curriculum-based measures in reading all help to determine the level of support needed. Tier 1 is the core curriculum and is provided to all students in general education. Tier 2 is a supplement to the core curriculum, provided by a general education teacher or a reading specialist in small groups of 30 to 40 minutes, 4 to 5 times per week. Tier 3 is supplemental or replacement curriculum, providing up to an additional 60 minutes per day to the core curriculum. This tier may include students receiving special education programming and reading. Parents are notified if students receive Tier 2 or Tier 3 support. Progress is monitored as often as once a week for students receiving Tier 2 or Tier 3 interventions. Overall, as Dr. Cooley stated, the number of students needing Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions continues to decrease, and student growth rates and movement across the tiers remain positive. In order to further reduce the reading achievement gap between students across the tiers, the following practices are recommended. First, trimester review of movement across the tiers by school to ensure positive student growth as well as appropriate changes in level of instruction. Second, continue to ensure consistency in programming and time across all schools. Third, consider using reading specialists as coaches in general education classrooms to strengthen the delivery of the core curriculum. Graphs included in this report may show varied results by school. However, this is mainly due to new students, mid-year move-ins, etc. The district has been creative regarding administering the tier interventions by using reading specialists, support services staff, including teacher assistants, and teachers who have masters in reading. Important to note, 85% of the teachers in our district who have master's degrees have them in reading. The full report can be found on the district website. At the Education Committee meeting on November 17th, the assessment reports given tonight by Dr. Cooley and Dr. Malin were also presented to us, so You'll see the full report on the website, and they went into great detail tonight. Thank you both very much. We were also presented by Laura Montgomery. She gave us an update in regards to our 21st century learning goals of the one-to-one netbook program. She informed us that building 21st century learning within these technologies helps with 4 C's: creation, collaboration, critical thinking, and communication. She noted that students have a more diverse toolbox to pull from now. They share knowledge student to student and can work as part of a team, an important life skill. They also have the opportunity to develop their self-direction skills. Students can communicate as a class within safe, controlled blogs and online discussion boards. An especially important point made by Laura is that our curriculum is just as strong, but now our teachers and students have more time and opportunities to engage in critical thinking. Time is no longer wasted as students wait for their classmates to finish using textbooks or other reference materials. Each child can be hands-on and acquire knowledge now. Consideration is also given regarding deciphering of factual versus inaccurate information. As Lake Bluff students use MacBooks, we find the netbooks to be not only less expensive, but limitless, as we are not tied into specific programs only designed for Mac computers. District 67 students will partake in a more broad view of educational tools. Our DPM students are learning management skills by caring for their netbooks while improving self-reliance as they utilize tools such as Edline and PowerSchool. At our December Board of Ed meeting, DPM students will share their netbook experiences, either in person or via video. At our February Education Committee meeting, Colleen Brueggemann, Director of Gifted Services, will discuss the baccalaureate program, as well as depict the current practice in 4th grade Explore classes as it relates to their study of water. And at our February Education Committee meeting, the 21st century learning goals will be discussed for next year. The Education Committee was adjourned at 10:25, and we will meet once again on February 14th at 8:15 a.m. at West Campus. In the meanwhile, the Education Committee is going to review the district dashboard, and on Monday, December 5th at 8:15, get together to submit suggestions and comments as to how we can improve our district dashboard. In addition, Dr. Henriksen will communicate updates from the Curriculum Coordinating Committee via email attachment of the minutes from the most recent meetings of the CCC to keep the Education Committee informed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you have anything to add, Bill? Where is he? Down there. Sorry.
No, I think that was an outstanding report.
Okay, thank you. The Board Operation Committee, Lori Rose and Rick Schuler.
The Board Operations Committee has not met since our last board meeting. The Operations Committee is scheduled to meet on December 6th at 8:30 a.m. at Everett School. In keeping with our practice developed earlier this year, board members, myself, and Rick will join Alan Albus and the community liaisons in a physical plant tour of Everett School with intent to assess it for future ongoing capital plans. This concludes the...
Lori, I believe that meeting date has been changed or has been delayed.
It's been postponed, but there's no new date yet.
Yeah,
so
I'm sorry, I stand
to be
corrected here.
determined.
I had it in my calendar and pulled it out this evening. We'll keep you updated on that. Please check the website.
Thank you. The Board Finance Committee, Jeff Pendersky and John Julian.
The Board Finance Committee has not met since our last meeting, and we are scheduled to have a meeting in early January at a date that we're still working out on all our calendars.
Thank you. This brings us to district committees where we act as the role of liaisons. First, we have the North Suburban Special Education District. Jeff Pendersky.
There is no report for NSSED this evening.
The Illinois Association of School Boards and Ed Red, Bill Anderson.
No report this evening.
The Governing Board, Bill Anderson.
Also no report.
Professional Development, Rick Schuler.
I do have plenty to report. First, I'd like to thank Andy Hendrickson for overseeing this. Thank you, Andy. Professional development, these past couple months, our teachers have continued their leadership and involvement in professional development, and I'd just like to hit a few highlights. All elementary teachers have studied the new Common Core mathematics standards. how these standards will influence nationally given tests beginning as early as fall of 2014, and we can ensure that our students continue to achieve the highest level of mathematics. Second, second grade teachers are collaborating to implement their new Words Their Way spelling program. Third, pilot sixth grade teachers of the Agile Mind Mathematics program are working with the consultant to ensure the achievement of our students. An assessment based on the new Common Core standards for mathematics will be administered in February to evaluate the program's effectiveness. Fourth, District 67's mentoring program has been effective this fall in helping the cadre of new teachers examine a host of best practices, reflect on the strengths and areas for improvement, and instill a collaborative atmosphere for professional development. Fifth, the curriculum director is facilitating the development of the Mandarin kindergarten and first grade curriculum. Our new Mandarin immersion teachers have participated in professional development, sponsored collaboratively with Barrington and Schaumburg. And last, 21st Century Learning Coach Amy Lamberti and technology coach Laura Montgomery are working closely each day with the 5th and 6th graders, 6th grade teachers, that is, to develop new and engaging learning experiences using netbooks. We will hear from Amy and Laura at our December meeting when an update on our 2020 vision is presented. That's it.
Thank you very much. Rick, this brings us to Curriculum Coordinating Committee and Lori Rose.
I hope I get this one right. The Curriculum Coordinating Committee has not met, that I know for sure, and we're scheduled to meet on Thursday, December 1st, to review the progress on the 2020 Vision Initiative and the 5th and 6th grade netbook pilot.
Thank you, Lori. The Spirit of 67 Foundation met on Tuesday, November 8th at 9:15 a.m. The Spirit had a great month due to the fantastic efforts of the benefit luncheon, the phone-a-thon, and corporate fundraising. Thank you to the co-chairs, the committees, and the many volunteers. Donations received this past month were just shy of $35,000, and participation across the district is now close to 39%. This participation number includes all those who made membership donations as well as those families who supported the Spirit with benefit lunch sponsorships. That concludes the Spirit of 67 Foundation report. Are there any other committees that board members that have met that board members would like to report on?
I would just say I attended.
Oh. The superintendent, John was mentioning superintendent search. We did meet together with District 115 last night and did review resumes and applications for that position, and we'll be interviewing. Is it next week already that we're interviewing? Yeah, that we will interview 6 candidates in about a week. Thank you.
I was just going to say I attended the meeting of the APT just last week or week before, and was just very impressed and appreciative of all the work that a lot of people do in APT for lots of different activities and working with students and all the kids in the district. So it's a tremendous group, and to be honest, I didn't realize how much they do.
Thank you. That brings us to recommendations with the Deer Path Middle School Principal Matter Review. Because I was on the board 3 years ago, I'm recusing myself from this matter, and John Julian is taking charge.
Thank you, Julia. For those of you who don't know, I'm John Julian. I'm the vice president of this board. As Julia also mentioned, there were several members of the board who were engaged on the board back when the matter of John Steinert, which has been all over the news for the last week or so, they were involved at the time, and they have voluntarily recused themselves from the issue of an independent investigation of the matters that took place at that time. I have agreed to oversee the process. Tonight, what was decided, and we're going to have a motion on this, there is a subcommittee of those members of the board who were not involved at the issues at the time 3 years ago, and that subcommittee, of course, would be Rick Schuler, Leslie Fisher, myself, and Bill Anderson. The four of us met tonight and had an interview with selected candidates for independent counsel in this situation. Before I tell you what the results of that are, I believe we have to have a motion to begin, and I'd like to like to see if there would be a motion, if we could move forward with the. If there is a motion to undertake an independent review of the matter of Deer Path Principal John Steinert, I'd like to see a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Second. On this matter, all members of the board may vote to indicate their support or otherwise to move forward with this motion. This may be a voice vote. Therefore, all in favor of the motion to undertake an independent review of the matter of Deer Path Middle School Principal John Steinert, may I hear aye?
Aye.
I'm sorry. Suggest a roll call vote.
Oh, roll call.
Yes.
My understanding was voice vote. All right. Then we'll go with the roll call vote on this. Pam?
Mrs. Fisher?
Aye.
Mr. Pendersky?
Aye.
Mr. Julian?
Aye.
Mrs. Rose?
Aye.
Mr. Schuler?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mrs. Swold?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, with the motion carrying, we will now move forward with an independent review of the matter. The second motion I would like people to consider, as I indicated tonight, the subcommittee of four did interview with candidates for independent counsel to be considered. We did make a selection of independent counsel. At this time, I'd like to introduce the individual who we have considered, and following the introduction, we'll take a vote to indicate whether we would like to proceed. The individual who we are considering at this point is Ronald Safer. Mr. Safer is seated over at the table to my right at the end. Mr. Safer is, a little background on Mr. Safer, he is the managing partner for the Chicago firm of Schiff Hardin. He is the former chief of the criminal division of the Northern District of Illinois U.S. Attorney's Office. Mr. Safer has a he is nationally regarded in the field of independent reviews in matters such as this. As I indicated, the four of us did interview Mr. Safer along with the other candidate, and our selection is to go with Mr. Safer. However, we're going to submit that to a vote at this time. May I have a motion whether to engage Ronald Safer as the independent counsel to assist the board in the review of the matter of Deer Path Middle School Principal John Steinert?
Motion to engage.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Now, on the motion of this, we are going to have those who have recused themselves from the matter, which then this is a recusal which will go forward in the entire process. So there will be a subcommittee that will be involved with this review going forward. Therefore, the roll call vote, which we'll ask for, will be only of those four individuals who are going to be involved in that process. May I have a roll call vote, Pam? Yes, sir.
Sorry. And that is that the motion would also allow the vice president to execute an engagement agreement with the independent counsel as part of that.
Okay, as part of that motion that I'm looking to get a motion for, to reiterate what Mr. Hernandez, the board attorney, outside counsel, has indicated, this motion would also include an authorization for me to sign a letter of engagement with Ronald Safer in order to conduct his business. So may I have a motion from one of the four?
So moved.
I second.
Pam, may I have a roll call vote on that, please?
Mr. Schuler?
Aye.
Mrs. Fisher?
Aye.
Mr. Julian?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Motion carries.
With the decision made to identify an independent counsel to assist the board in this matter, I would like the members of the public and the rest of the board to understand that our charge for this independent counsel will be very specific. We intend on charging the independent counsel to follow 3 points. One, we'd like to determine, and this is of the incident that happened 3 years ago, determine whether the district's policies and procedures were followed in the matter of Deer Path Middle School Principal John Steinert. Two, determine whether the district's policies and procedures need to be revised, and if so, have recommendations in that regard, in light of the facts that have come to light since then. And 3, determine whether there was any wrongdoing that occurred regarding the handling of the matter at that time. So it's a very specific charge, and as I indicated, Ron Safer is going to be assisting us in that matter, and I encourage anyone who is interested, certainly look him up, his bio on his firm. He's a very well-regarded independent counsel in these kind of fields, and I think he will serve us very well. Are there any other questions from the board on this matter? Julia, I turn it back to you.
Thank you. This brings us to the consent agenda items. We have the approval of minutes of a regular meeting and an executive session on October 25th, the minutes of a special meeting on November 20th, the approval of disbursements, payrolls, and financial statement from October 2011, totaling $1,061,953. Payrolls in October totaling $1,446,481.26, and the October 2011 financial report. We also have the approval of human resources items of leave requests, new staff, retirements, and status changes. We have the record of closed meetings, the destruction of audio recordings from January 27th, 2010. Is there any item that a board member would like removed for further discussion?
Just a point of order. I do recommend that the board, for the next 30 to 60 days, in light of its action, hold in abeyance item D with respect to the closed minute tapes.
Okay. So we will remove that from the consent agenda and then vote on the consent agenda, correct?
Yes, that's what I recommend.
So item D is removed from the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with item D removed?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mrs. Fisher?
Aye.
Mr. Julian?
Aye.
Mr. Pendersky?
Aye.
Mrs. Rose?
Aye.
Mr. Schuler?
Aye.
Mrs. Wold?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Then we have FOIA requests. We have FOIA requests from Nancy Thorner in Lake Bluff. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of those. As announced earlier, we did have an executive session prior to this meeting. There will not be an executive session following this meeting. Future agenda items. Is there any topic that a board member would like added to our future agendas? Seeing none. Announcements. Wednesday, this is the dates of our Wednesday and Thursday, December 7th and 8th. The board will be meeting in executive session with School Exec Connect, 5 p.m. West Campus. Saturday, December 10th, is a special meeting of the Board of Education at 9 a.m. on at West Campus. This is specifically regarding the superintendent search. And Tuesday, December 13th, is our next regularly scheduled Board of Education meeting at 7 p.m. here at West Campus. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.